In Lebanon, Professor Hassan Diyab, Professor in Electronic and Computer Engineering. Professor Diab is a prolific researcher with over 130 publications in international refereed journals. He has also been awarded about 20 awards, particularly one of them is the Fulbright. Please, Professor Diab, please proceed to the stage. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, I'm told I have to speak in English, so this session, I guess there's translation for those who want it. Let me first start by saying it's such a pleasure to be back in my second home, Kuwait. I'm always happy and filled with joy when I come back to Kuwait, so it was an opportunity for me when I was presented with this invitation. I immediately said yes. Kuwait is among the leading countries in education and higher education. As such, this conference has a great significance, especially in terms of the pioneering efforts of the Arab Open University in terms of distance learning. There's no doubt that the future with exponential growth of students seeking higher education, that the future lies in virtual universities, in distance learning. Of course, the challenges are not in the technological devices, although this is part of the whole formula, and we have speakers that will be talking about that in this session. However, in my humble opinion, the challenge will be in the e-content, in the software, firmware, which will obviously be compatible regardless of the technological or hardware generations that will be used at different intervals in the future. Obviously, handheld devices, in my opinion, will have a major role in distance learning. And as such, I can see that in a decade or more, a lot of the universities, existing universities, will switch, if not completely, to a large extent, to distance learning mode, as well as new virtual universities that will implement that. This is a very interesting session. We have 3 speakers. I would like to initially introduce the first speaker, who is Professor Tim Blackman. Of course, I will not be talking about his CV, otherwise I'll take the full session. But I would say that he is the Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research, Scholarship, and Quality at the Open University in the UK. The Open University in the UK obviously has been offering distance learning for a very long time. I went to the UK in 1976. I lived there for 10 years, and distance learning through the Open University was a big thing at the time, still is, I suppose. He is responsible for the strategic development of research across the university and quality assurance and enhancement of all programs. Tim joined the Open University from Durham University, where he was Dean of the university's campus in Stockton-on-Tees and Director of the Wolfson Research Institute for Health and Well-Being. He's a professor of sociology and social policy, and he graduated in geography and studied in Durham for a PhD in urban sociology. He was elected to the prestigious Academy of Social Sciences in 2004, and he previously headed the School of Applied Social Sciences at Durham. He was Dean at the School of Social Sciences and Law at the University of Teesside, Deputy Dean at the School of Social Sciences and Law at Oxford Brookes University, and so on and so forth. His talk today will be on innovation and quality in distance learning, which will discuss the extraordinary effect that new technologies and open educational resources can have on improving the efficiency, accessibility, and equity of education, training, and learning. This is a 45-minute talk, so if we can spend 40 minutes and give questions 5 minutes or so at the end, so it's about 10:40 now. Professor Tim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Minister, for that very kind introduction, and it's a great honour for me to be making this presentation to such a distinguished audience, and I'm very grateful indeed for the invitation from the Arab Open University, which is one of our most important partners at the Open University in the UK. So I'm extremely pleased to be here. And I'm going to talk about innovation and quality in distance learning, because quality is one of the big issues in distance learning, and quality actually is one of the major strengths that we can deliver through open supported learning, as I will explain in a moment. I want to start, though, with this quote from a recent European Commission document, and it says, "New technologies and open educational resources can have an extraordinary effect on improving the efficiency, accessibility, and equity of education, training, and learning. Learning and teaching can become more focused on the learner, supporting individual learning pathways, enhancing collaboration online, and blending formal and informal education. Personalization, collaboration, and links between formal and informal learning, enhanced by technologies, will be at the core of future learning and push educational institutions towards opening education and institutional transformation." So quite a visionary statement. And why quite so visionary? Many reasons, but a very important reason is the huge growth that we are experiencing around the world in the use of open online learning resources. And the left-hand graph in this slide shows you the steep expansion in the number of users of our own resources at the Open University UK on iTunes U, and on the right-hand side, the growth in the users of MOOCs, massive open online courses, on the Coursera platform. Just to make the point that this is a global phenomenon, and we're seeing this extremely rapid increase in accessing these learning opportunities on the internet, often open and freely available. Now, at the Open University, we have a particular model of pedagogy which we call supported open learning, where the student is very much at the centre of our model, surrounded by three key elements. The associate lecturer, who is essentially a tutor. We have 250,000 students at the Open University. Those students are in tutorial groups of around about 20, each with an associate lecturer who guides them through their course. The course itself is produced to a very high standard of learning design, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. And then we have learning support services available 24/7 by email, on the telephone, to further wrap that support around the student. And then, of course, there's the support for students from other students. This is a very important area of innovation and development for us at the Open University, where we're putting in place the means to enable other students to support their peers on their courses and to encourage social interaction and the exchange of tips and experiences that help them learn as a community. So building that learning community is quite an innovation frontier for us currently. So you won't be able to see the detail of this slide, but it's just there to say that this is just a snapshot from our one of our virtual learning environments at the Open University. These VLEs are designed really around the study planner, very much about supporting the student through their course, block by block, week by week, and then a one-stop shop, if you like, all the resources they need from that portal in terms of accessing the library, contacting their tutor, accessing their assessments, and so on. And We make that available on mobile devices, so our students can look at their study planner on their iPad, on their mobile phone. They can check out what they're supposed to be doing that week, access their assessment, communicate with their tutor, talk to other students. So this has been a very important development for us in recent times to move our materials over onto mobile devices. And now all our courses can be accessed from mobile platforms, phones, iPads, tablets, etc. We have a very strong commitment at the Open University in the UK to making resources available free of charge. And we do this for two reasons. One, it's part of our mission to provide free and open learning. We have many courses available on our Open Learn website. This is just a snapshot of the Open Learn website. Hundreds of free courses. And this is about our mission, but it's also about encouraging students to start their learning journey. So many of our students, before they enroll on a fee-paying course, will have taken a free course on Open Learn that will have whetted their appetite, shown them that they can do it, built their confidence, and then they go on and progress their learning journey. And we make this website very contemporary, so the front page is often reflecting a global issue that's in the news, or as in this example, the start of a new television series that we're producing with the BBC on population growth. And that output on the BBC is part of our commitment to free, informal learning resources. And we make many of our resources that are often parts of our courses available on iTunes U, major presence on iTunes U as well as Facebook, where you can access high-quality learning free of charge. Part of our mission, but also to try always to start students on their learning journey. And recently we have launched a MOOC platform called Future Learn, which is a partnership with about 25 leading universities from the UK and around the world. So this is the Open University moving into the MOOC space in a very significant way, providing a platform that we intend to be equivalent of Coursera, edX, and so on, and with a particular commitment to social interaction between the students, including creating opportunities for students to assess other students' work and get recognized for that, or building this community of peer-to-peer support through free, informal learning. And partnerships are extremely important to how the Open University has developed over the decades. And one of the most important partnerships we have is with the BBC. And I'm just going to show you a short clip of video to tell you a little bit about that. If I've got any sound, that is.
Together. Darwin's great insight revolutionized the way in which we see the world.
The view is unbelievable.
And now there are so many more ways to learn and get involved.
It's interactive and it's mobile. Follow the link to the OU and take part in our Bang Interactive Challenge.
This revolutionary breakthrough in knowledge.
You are, all of you, political philosophers.
You don't make a mistake, you don't make anything.
You can have a go at tests like this on the Open University website.
Bringing learning to life. The BBC in partnership with the Open University.
So that's a very important partnership for us, all about reaching the public. It's all about two organisations having aligned missions to educate and inform. So what are the key ingredients of success so far as we see it at the Open University? If I was to name a few, these are what they are. Recruiting excellent university teaching staff. We put a great deal of effort into recruiting the right people with the right skills, creating the right environment that they want to come and work in. An excellent design process, by which I mean learning design. Putting a great deal of thought into how courses are designed, from their initial objectives through to the methods of assessment, to the use of different media, and always working on the basis of what works best for the student. Building up a body of institutional knowledge, actually having a commitment within the organisation to R&D to provide an innovation driver. Being evaluative, evaluating what we do all the time, and having excellent research. The Open University is a research university as well as a teaching university. 2/3 of our subject areas are in the top 20 for research quality in the UK higher education sector. So a little bit more detail on that. We're an evidence-based organisation. We believe that universities should not just be researching other organisations, but researching themselves, building up the evidence base they need to be excellent. Course performance. Reviewing course performance not just at the end of courses, through student evaluation and feedback, but during the course itself, learning all the time how to improve the course while it's in flight. Best practice. Learning from best practice wherever it is around the world, not just in terms of what we learn internally, but looking all the time for exemplars. Living data. More and more we're using learning analytics to understand how our students behave more or less in real time and to make improvements, often more or less in real time, as they learn and progress through their courses. And sharing practice, making sure that innovations that we develop are evaluated and mainstreamed when we can do that, and then evaluated in terms of further follow-up. So learning design is a very important approach that we're now formalising and systematising in the Open University, so that when an academic colleague is developing a new course, they can go to this website where there's a series of tools that help them think through the design of that course, how they establish the objectives, how they decide on modes of assessment, how they then make choices about different types of learning media, how the whole thing is put together. And we want to capture that process and make sure it's recorded. We want to gather together exemplar courses, which we call modules, that comprise our degree courses, exemplar modules that mean that people aren't reinventing the wheel. They can look at modules that we know have worked really well, and then they can transfer that learning into how they design their own module. And how this fits together, really, is to have the faculty design team at the centre, supported by these learning design tools that are online, a repository of exemplars and assistance with putting the course together, and people we call data wranglers, who are academic colleagues whose job it is to interpret data, student feedback, analytics, and translate that evidence back to the learning design team, to the faculty design team, so that they all the time are continuously improving what they do. A little bit more detail on that. Research, as I've said, is very important for us. It's about exploring the huge amounts of data that virtual learning environments generate, understanding what it means. It's about interpreting the results of specific projects we do, or, as I say, those streams of research. The teaching then can collect data, student feedback. It's all about the teaching being learning design as well as the actual presentation of the module, follow-up and evaluation, and then continual quality improvement. So this principle that we're improving quality all the time and learning to understand where the real efficacy is, where the real positive effects on student learning are, is a very important principle that we're embedding across the organisation. So a couple of examples of our quality assurance work. This example here is how we have gone about addressing a lower than expected pass rate on an undergraduate third level module. So what happened here was that analysis was done. We know across the university in general terms what factors are important to student success. We look at this module in terms of where those factors are underperforming. We identify 3 of those where there are issues on this module that were about essentially previous learning in the subject area and the effect that that had on the performance in this module. We then draw on student feedback. We pick up problems reported by students on the online delivery, and then we plan a series of enhancements. In this case, drawing on that exercise to advise students that the module should not be taken as their first third-level module in the subject area. And then also making some adjustments to the learning design. And then we'll go back and evaluate how effective that has been. Another example is our quality enhancement seminars, where we bring together teams that have produced particularly well-performing modules to run workshops for other colleagues to learn about what's worked. And we'll provide background information for those seminars, a map of the module, basic data about the module, and then we'll ask the team to actually share how they got it right, well, what it was that was behind their success with the module. And we'll look at particular examples. So on this module, there was a particular example of a wiki-based assignment and moving on to pilot peer review by students of other students. We got very good feedback from students that really helped them with their learning. So we then go on and roll out that learning to other modules, sharing that learning and the lessons behind that module about communicating with students to make sure that they understand assessment as part of their learning and not just a test of how much they know, and the value of collaborative work in student learning on that module, and deepening our commitment to using learning design to improve how we go about that. So 2 quick examples of how we've gone about improving modules, looking at modules where there's weaknesses to improve them, and then looking at modules that are performing particularly well to spread that learning. Now, one of the big challenges we face at the Open University is teaching science, because many people who often say, well, you can't teach science virtually. Well, you can, and you can often teach science better virtually than in real laboratories, although we would argue that the two are complementary, and often you need to blend real-life experience with preparation in a virtual environment. But a lot of our research actually shows that for certain aspects of science education, students can learn better through methods that are delivered virtually. So we've built the Open Science Laboratory at the Open University with funding from a charitable trust. And the idea there is to create a whole range of science learning opportunities using simulation and remote control of devices and equipment. And a few quick insights into this. There's different windows you can go in through in the Open Science Laboratory. You can go into a real science laboratory, set up tests, carry out those tests. You can analyze data. You can operate equipment remotely. Our students can operate microscopes and an astronomical telescope remotely through the Open Science Laboratory. Other things, various types of testing, exploring the surface of Mars virtually, operating equipment, as I've said, in the top left-hand corner there. You can do a flame test virtually in the laboratory. One of the big challenges for us is to introduce things that go wrong, because, of course, in the real laboratory, things often don't work properly. There's always a temptation with simulation to make it perfect, and we have to build in these things going wrong to really simulate the actual experience. And then other views there, there's the astronomical telescope that sits in Mallorca that our students can operate from anywhere, and virtual field trips in the bottom right-hand corner. So this is a good way of preparing students for real field trips, or enabling students who, for reasons of, say, perhaps a disability, cannot go on a real field trip, but we can give them a very similar experience virtually. On the right-hand side there is an example of some of our citizen science work. We use the Open Science Laboratory to encourage the public to think of themselves as scientists. This is an application that works on a mobile phone. It's called iSpot. It's when anybody can photograph wildlife, send it into this website, and it'll crowdsource the identification. And we use that to engage people in science and learning and constantly encourage them to go further with their learning journey. On the left-hand side there is our virtual microscope. And just showing you a little bit about how that works. Here's somebody choosing to do some further investigation into a piece of rock, a geological specimen. They're pulling up some facts and figures about that piece of rock, reading through that, and then they're going to go on and use the microscope to have a look at a slice of that geological specimen. And you'll see that in just a moment. There they go, and are having a look at it using the microscope. And you can do this from a PC, from a tablet, from a mobile phone. This is an example of a research student supervision, virtually.
Okay, well, I'm having problems identifying the olivine.
Okay, let's take a look at it together. I'll take control. There are quite a few olivines. They're quite small and they're embedded in the peroxides, Andy. Let's move across to the rotation. In fact, even in cross-polarised light, you can't see it. Can you take control and go into that rotation? Now you can see just there, the peroxine's gone into extinction.
So you're saying the yellow crystal's olivine, but how do I know it's not a pyroxene?
It's the cleavage. You can see the cleavage of the peroxine. It's got long, straight cleavage. The olivine has that rounded shape and no cleavage. You can see cracks just going across it.
So the student is miles away there, and the supervisor is talking the student through how to identify a particular mineral in a moon rock sample. And what this means is that the two of them can look down the same microscope, it's in focus, and the learning can be much deeper through that ability to engage and share the same resource and the same experience in how to identify a mineral sample in that particular example. Whoops.
Hi, Simon.
You don't want to see it again, I don't think. So this technology is all about drawing the student in, engaging them, helping them to reflect on what they're learning, enabling them to test themselves as well as be tested, and to challenge them. So you can do all sorts of things in our open science laboratory. You can build a molecule, balance an equation, investigate chemical reactivity, and then get feedback by testing yourself in your own time, at your own pace, to check that you're learning what we're aiming to teach the students. And we're moving more, as I've mentioned earlier, to sharing the student experience. So we enable, through our materials, for students to annotate their materials and then to share those annotations across the cloud with other students, so that what they find as useful material, good hints and tips about how to learn, how to find material, can be shared with the community of other students on their module. So, a lot of technological advances. It's not the technology, as we've heard already, that's so important. It's the learning design. It's actually designing the learning and then delivering it through technology in a way that serves the core purpose, and that is the success of our students regarding their study goals. Keeping the students engaged. Most of our students are adult learners, other things going on in their lives, they're working, they're having children, bringing children up, moving house. So there's always an important imperative to keep the student engaged, to see them through to completion of their course. But there are issues with this whole approach. Lack of skills in terms of these teaching and learning environments. Huge staff development agenda that we have ourselves in the Open University to keep people up to speed with these different technology options. Attitudes. People often see the use of these technologies as not real education for some reason. And yet, as I've said at the beginning, it's often better education. Digital content. There's still not enough of it. It's expensive to produce in terms of high quality. There are issues like legal issues around copyright and licensing that can be very difficult to navigate. ICT infrastructure and equipment. Of course, the uneven availability of ICT infrastructures and tools is a limitation. One thing we've been doing at the Open University is how do we deliver materials through new technologies in areas like sub-Saharan Africa, in parts of Asia, where The infrastructure is not the same necessarily as parts of the West. What can we use? We can use cheap mobile phones to bundle up materials and reach learning communities that way, for example. But you know, one of the major drivers of change to this whole approach of open supported learning using digital methods is urbanization, is that our planet is urbanizing and more people are living in cities. And of course, many of these cities are becoming smart cities. But that's a term that's not very often used in relation to education, ironically. It's often used in relation to technologies and networks that support energy supply, water supply, the management of transport and traffic. And our cities around the world, of course, are facing all sorts of challenges, from population growth, from resource crunches of different types, the need to be more sustainable and to operate these systems more smartly. And these smart solutions for cities are coming through developing instrumented, interconnected and intelligent networks. So cities themselves are becoming smarter. The networks through which our cities function are generating more and more data, big data, through sensors, through meters, to tell us about how they operate. Citizens themselves are generating data through the use of social media. Often, those communications in social media may well be about something that's happening with the traffic. So we can put sensors in transport infrastructures together with understanding what the public are saying at any point in time about what's happening with the ability to get from one part of the city to another. So cities are becoming smart. And this is a point I wanted to really leave you with, is that, so what's happening to their populations? Cities are becoming smarter. Our ability to make cities intelligent is developing all the time at a tremendous pace. But unless we create ways for the public to engage with the smart city, we're going to see new types of inequality and divide grow in our society. So how smart our cities are is not just a question about how advanced the technologies are and the networks are. It's actually an issue that their populations need to be knowledgeable. They live in knowledge societies. They need to be knowledgeable themselves. We will be disempowering people if we're not spreading learning and advanced learning as widely and as democratically as we can. This is a basic right of citizenship in the new cities that are not just of the future, but are already with us. So this is about learning in an open world. It's about learning, actually getting out of the cloisters and the campus. It's about the university being everywhere and anywhere. And that's ultimately about engaging the public, more and more bringing people from a diverse range of different backgrounds into a learning experience. It's about living and learning in a networked world where things are getting faster, more disruptive, but more social. The rise of e-books is a classic example of these changes that are occurring now. And a quick example here from the Open University about our e-books. It's just a visual, there's no sound to this. But it's showing you what we can do with learning design when it's rolled into the design of an e-book. So, and of course you don't have to carry these books about with you. You can just take your tablet and look at it on the bus or when you've got a lunch break at work. And that's another thing that's beginning to happen in the smart city and in learning, is that people are learning in shorter and shorter periods of time. We found at the Open University that almost half of our students are saying that their most common learning period is 20 minutes. They're taking a break from work. They're taking a break from the kids. They're just doing some revision, doing some reading when they find the time for it, So we have to design our learning to adapt to that behaviour. A rather extreme example is that we actually roll up some of our learning into 60-second bites, and this is an example of that.
60-second adventures in astronomy. Number 5, the rotating moon. Whenever you look at the moon from Earth, it always looks similar. Different parts are illuminated at different times, but oddly we always see the same features. The moon never turns its back on us, much like the rules of etiquette when you visit the Queen. So does this mean the moon doesn't rotate? Well, no, because then, as it orbited us, we would see first its front, then its left side, and then its rear. What actually happens is that the moon rotates exactly once every orbit, which takes a bit less than a month. So, though you'd see it spinning from an outside perspective, from the Earth we always see the same side. In fact, we didn't get a proper view of the far side of the moon until 1959, thanks to a Soviet space probe. The moon used to spin a lot faster, but over millions of years, the gravitational pull or tidal force from the Earth has slowed the moon down. The same thing has happened to most moons of large planets. But it doesn't work both ways, because while the moon is spinning once every orbit, the Earth is rotating about 30 times faster. So from a vantage point on the moon, you'd get to see us from all sides, if you stuck around long enough.
So there's an awful lot of learning in essentially what's a cartoon there. Very engaging, you can play it again and again, and you can play it anywhere. Oh, don't want to play that yet. So just to begin to wind up, social learning is for us the new frontier. It's about students sharing their learning, building their learning communities, as I've explained already, and working on the technologies that enable that to happen. And my final point to you, really, is that the university of the future needs to be the university that is everywhere and anywhere, outside the campus, outside the cloisters, but is weaved into people's everyday lives, at home, at work, if they're sitting in the cafe, sitting on the bus. And I just want to conclude with this short piece of video, which is about what the Open University is doing to be the Open University anywhere. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Well, we have 5 minutes for questions, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Osama Jamali, advisor to the Australian College of Kuwait. Dr. Blackman, I share the Chairman's appreciation of the programs on BBC. If I'm in London, they're my preferable programs to watch. But coming to Open Universities as a teaching tool, I think there's some implied assumptions there, especially at the level of the student. There must be an implied assumption with regard to self-discipline of the student to want to learn and organize his time. Second, there should be sort of a minimum level of learning skills for him to be able to appreciate and retain the knowledge that he is exposed to on television. So these assumptions, I don't know if anybody addresses them. Second, you implied that you can teach science probably even better than in reality. How do you compensate for the tactical experience of touch, smell, and taste? I always assumed that watching a history or a geography program on Open University was interesting, but when it came to chemistry or physics, we had a different animal there. Lastly, you had this beautiful cartoon of the Queen, you know, insisting that nobody turns his back to her. How well do your programs translate into other languages? Thank you.
Some very good questions there, if I may say so. In answer to your first question, I could have said more about learning design, but part of learning design, a key part of learning design, is to think through the levels of learning that students go through and how we can get the design of content, but also the design of teaching methods right to reflect the level of achievement the student is at. So that stepping up through the learning journey is very much part of how we design our courses. And then one of the reasons for using these technologies is to make the learning interesting, to engage the students. And we find, I think this is true right across the higher education sector, that the way to keep students, to stop them dropping out of their course, is to engage them. It's about engagement. Any way we can develop our learning materials to be more interesting and more engaging, including students engaging with other students on their course and being able to share how other students dealt with an issue that meant that they almost withdrew from the course. You know, even that social support is something that can often be done better peer-to-peer than through accessing a counsellor. We do that as well. But building community and using community to engage students is an important part of the solution to that question. Taking students through the different levels. At the Open University, we don't, for our undergraduate provision, we of course don't require pre-existing academic qualifications, but we use a lot of diagnostic tests and we use a lot of free materials to keep on challenging the student to say, are you ready? Are you sure this is right for you at this time? Now, if they insist that they want to do a module in astrophysics, they can. They'll probably fail, but our support and advice systems are there to advise them on the basis of them testing out modules for free and undertaking a diagnostic test that this may or may not be the right thing for them to do, including progressing on to postgraduate, for example. I think your second question, if you just remind me what that was, because I know your third one was about...
The tactile experience with regard to science.
Yes, the science education. So I think I said that some types of science education can be simulated to be as good, if not better, than others. So teaching students using a microscope to identify specimens under the microscope can be done very well virtually because the microscope's in focus, the teacher knows that the students are all seeing the same image through the microscope, they're not having to wander around the lab, sorting out problems for the students that get in the way of the learning experience. Other types, like the sense of touch, feel, smell, are more difficult, for sure, to replicate. But there are things that can be done. And of course, this is a technology frontier. I think in future decades, we'll be able to do that. So we're not going to stop trying to do that. And your final question was about translation. A lot of our materials are translated for use in other parts of the world, but there can be limitations, and always we need to work with a partner to contextualize the content so that it's appropriate.
Please go ahead. Is there a microphone around?
It's with me here. Sorry, can I have my question?
Okay, you can start and then...
All right, thank you. My name is Zahir Rasrour from EF, Education First. Well, Doctor, I think EF, as the biggest online language learning school, shares a lot with the Open University in terms of the content design and the delivery and nature of delivery. My question to you is about the monitoring progress. How do you, as a university, monitor and control the progress of the students? And does the student have any tool to see where is he with the course and with the learning path he's having? Thank you.
Okay, we have a wide range of means of monitoring the progress of the students. Probably the key relationship is with their associate lecturer, who's their tutor on their course, who will know how they're doing, will know the student as a person. But we also, any contact with our student services is logged and recorded, so we have a record of how the student's been doing, the types of issues they may have been raising in the past. We are introducing, we are strengthening our student support through the introduction of student support teams, which is, I won't go into detail, but is a further move to ensure that we've got, in a sense, the multidisciplinary support around them, both academic and other types of support, social support and so on, that's right for them. And we will be data-driven in all of that. So the student support teams, for example, will have dashboards of data about how the module is performing and in time about how the individual student is performing relative to other students like them. We do a lot of work, analytics work, profiling our students to understand who may be at risk of not fully achieving, and then we'll actually make advanced preventative interventions on the basis of student profiles, even before they get into difficulty, targeting phone calls to check that they don't have any problems, that they know that there's an assessment coming up, is there any help that they need. So that's a very important area for us now of using those predictive analytics to actually support the student before they know they need support. All of this is possible. One of the big challenges we have is actually managing all this data so that we focus the data, direct the data on student achievement to where it's most needed. And one area we're beginning to think about now, which is again a development area, is how we can use some of this evidence about so-called nudging, behavioural economics, where we're actually sending messages to the student about how they're doing relative to other students like them, to just give them a nudge that they're doing fine, or that actually they can do better, and other students just like them do better. So there's a whole range of things that we have already in place, but we are continuing to develop.
Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blackburn, for an excellent presentation, including illuminations on what you are doing at OU in the way of innovation to raise the quality of your delivery system. You mentioned in your presentation the intellectual property rights. And in the same breath, we mentioned democratization of education and open learning to reach everybody freely. Some courses are being now open, but can we dream and when of a time when at least all disciplines at the undergraduate level, let's start with this, at the undergraduate level, the material will be open for everybody without the restriction of the intellectual property rights. Even we can dream further that the efforts, the money which is spent by one particular institution producing this material will be rewarded. Can we dream also of an international granting agency who would be willing to reward each institution separately, but still the material will be open for everybody? Because this is knowledge, this is education, and not education just for open courses, but for a university degree. Because it's in the interest of humanity that everybody will go for at least a first university degree. Thank you, Mr. Blackman.
Your Excellency, dreaming is a prerequisite to getting anywhere.
Indeed. All I can say is I join you in that aspiration, and we're doing at the Open University what we can to make materials open and freely available.
Anyone else? Yes, please go ahead. Could you possibly pass over there? Excuse me, there's a question over there.
Yes, I am Nadal Al-Musa from Jordan branch. Indirectly, you referred to the importance of institutional research in order to improve our performance as far as our students, our tutors, our study plans are concerned. Are we really engaged in doing institutional research at any branch, including the British Open University? The other point is related to research. I understand most of the tutors at British Open University are part-timers. They have a problem of promotion in their home universities, in their original universities. But in the Arab world, a large number of tutors are full-timers, and they have a problem as far as promotion is concerned. Institutional research, generally speaking, is undervalued, and sometimes it is not taken into consideration when it comes to promotion. So can you please comment on these points?
I obviously can't comment in any detail about the situation in the Arab Open University in that regard, but I had some really productive conversations with Professor Ashwi yesterday in terms of how the Open University in the UK might work more closely with the Arab Open University to support the development of research. Certainly at the Open University in the UK, our research environment is important for two fundamental reasons. One is that we are an evidence-based organisation, so we need the internal R&D capability to develop innovations and to test whether they work. And we need the academics with the competencies to do that, and also who are part of a wider scholarly community, so can look for best practice around the world from wherever it comes. The second reason is that we put a lot of our own internal funding into research at the OU in disciplines, in subjects, and interdisciplinary research that's not about teaching and learning, but is about the wider scholarship in a discipline. The reason we do that is twofold. One is to maintain our reputation. When the Open University was set up in 1969, there was a deliberate policy of creating us as a teaching and research university so that we would be seen as a proper university. And the second reason is that to recruit academics, we need to provide a research environment. Great teachers, not always, but generally want to come and work in a great research environment and have that kind of atmosphere around them. So we do that in order to recruit the academics that we need.
Okay, we still have just a couple of minutes. With your permission, I'd like to ask three questions with respect to learning design tools that you presented. The first is, how do you evaluate that the body of knowledge represents the state of the art in the subject matter? What system is in place? The second has to do with how do you integrate elements of within the course design that promote innovation and entrepreneurship? And the third, to what extent will, we know that with the state-of-the-art HMDs, head management displays, that virtual reality and virtual environments have been implemented in a large scope of applications. To what extent will virtual environments be used with respect to the question as well, the practical experience that the gentleman raised, in distance learning in sciences and engineering? Very quick answers.
Okay, I'll give a very quick answer. The major challenge around evaluating what learning designs are most successful is not the outcome data, you know, the student performance, student satisfaction. It's actually capturing the features of the design. So a big advantage of using these learning tools and the learning design system we have is that it records the decisions that are made about the design of the course, the balance of different types of teaching, the balance of different types of assessment. So we can understand student performance through a systematic comparison with descriptions of the design that are actually recorded, you know, on our computer system, and enabling us to classify and categorize features of the design and ask those questions about what designs work best. So that's been a very important reason for us deciding to, in a sense, surface and make transparent design decisions. I think in relation to innovation and enterprise, all universities in the UK are being challenged to develop student entrepreneurialism through what they do. Quick answer is that we will look for the modules that are best at doing that, classify them as exemplars, put them into the learning design system, and point academics to those modules as being particularly successful in inculcating a sense of enterprise and innovation among the students. So a key aspect there is to collect the evidence and then share it about what works in relation to particular questions like that. And finally, on science education, well, you know, it's important for us to research what works. So when I say that we can teach science better in some regards, I say that because we've studied it and we've compared learning in a real environment with learning in a virtual environment. But this is a developmental frontier. And before we mainstream things, we have to know that they're going to work. So the Open Science Laboratory is partly experimental and is partly a mainstream part of our curriculum.
Professor Blackman, thank you very much. Our second speaker is Professor Muhammad Ali. Dr. Ali is a professor in the Center for Distance Education and researcher in the Technology Enhanced Knowledge Research Institute at Athabasca University in Canada. He received his PhD from the University of Alberta, Canada. His current areas of research include mobile learning, e-learning, distance education, and use of ICT in training and education. He recently edited 5 books on the use of emerging technologies in education, and his book, Mobile Learning, which is transforming the delivery of education and training, won the Charles Wedemeyer Award in the United States for significant contribution to distance education. Did I pronounce it right?
Yes, you did.
His talk will be on improving access to education with emerging learning technologies, which will address how education must become more flexible to increase access to meet the needs of learners and society through the use of emerging learning technologies such as smartphones, tablets, handheld devices, and others. Professor Ali, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. So in my session today, I'll be present some research on open and distance education to tell you how effective it is based on extensive research. Talk about what countries are doing to improve access to education for its citizens. There are lots of activities around the world. And I think that right now in open distance education, we are ignoring one segment of students, and that's the engineering segment. Most of our courses are in social sciences, humanities, business, etc., and we are actually ignoring the engineering students. We are not giving them the opportunity to study at a distance, to do online courses. So I'm going to present some techniques that we can use for engineering students. Actually, open and distance education is all about access. And what I did is I looked at the mission statement for what I think are the 3 top open universities in the world. The Arab Open University mission is to develop and disseminate knowledge and build expertise according to international quality standards without time or geographical barriers, so access to education. The OU UK, to be open to people, places, methods, and ideas. We promote educational opportunity and social justice by providing high-quality university education to all. It's all about access. And Athabasca University, Canada's Open University, is dedicated to the removal of barriers that restrict access. Again, it's all about accessing education. So I think open distance education universities are playing a major role to give people access to education around the world. In terms of the research, the United States Department of Education recently published a study, and they did a meta-analysis on studies that look at online learning and face-to-face instruction. And for those of you who are in statistics, a meta-analysis is an analysis of studies. So it looks at many, many studies, and it comes up with an analysis, and then it gives some conclusion. So what they did, the United States Department of Education, they examined 1,000 empirical studies, scientific studies, over 12 years. And the studies were selected they compare online and face-to-face. They measure student learning outcomes, and they look at studies that had good research design, rigorous research design. And what they found based on this extensive analysis, on average, students in online learning conditions performed modestly better than those receiving face-to-face instruction. So it is as good as face-to-face or better. Robert Bernard did a meta-analysis, and he's one of the experts in the world on meta-analysis. And actually, he was my thesis supervisor. And he looked at a number of studies, and based on the analysis, he concluded show no significant differences in effectiveness between distance education and face-to-face education. So distance education is working based on research studies. And as you can see, this was published in the Review of Educational Research, which is a very, very famous peer-reviewed journal. Sitzman and others did some analysis, and they found that online learning to be superior to classroom instruction in terms of declarative knowledge, so facts, concepts, so theory, and they are equivalent in terms of when students have to learn procedural knowledge, when they have to learn procedures to complete a task. So again, it is as effective as face-to-face. This slide shows the satisfaction of the quality of student experience at Athabasca University. The government of Alberta, we have KPIs, and they will actually survey students to find out the satisfaction level at the universities in Alberta, which include face-to-face and Athabasca. And as this chart shows, for 2004, close to 93% of the students were satisfied with their distance education experience at Athabasca University, and it increased over the years. And these percentages are higher than face-to-face universities, which shows that students who take online distance education courses, they perform better or they're more satisfied than students who attend face-to-face university. In terms of mobile learning, a few researchers did a study in 2012 where they looked at 164 mobile learning studies to find out the benefits of mobile learning. And 142 of those studies show positive benefits of mobile learning. So using smartphone, using tablets for learning. 6 reported neutral results, and only 1 showed negative results of mobile learning. And 15 not applicable. So about 87% shows benefits of mobile learning. So it seems as if, based on research, that mobile learning, online learning, is as effective as face-to-face instruction. And I don't think we need to question the validity or the benefits of online distance education. And we have the generations of distance education. Many, many years ago, we just had print manuals. We will send it to the student. And actually, you will mail it to the student, and they get it maybe 2 weeks later. You can't do that today. Students want everything now. Then we went to the second generation, where you had the print, and then you had some sort of a telecommunication support, telephone support. And then we went to the third generation when computers came out, e-learning, online learning, which means students can learn from anywhere, anytime. And now we're moving into the fourth generation, and it's actually already here, mobile and ubiquitous learning. Because students today have mobile devices. They have tablets, they have smartphones, and some students have multiple devices. So this, I'm not sure if you can read the cartoon. So this student who is working from home says he ran through the simulation, took Professor Green's quiz, did some research, rewrote and emailed the paper, all on the mobile phone. And now he's ready to order pizza. So the mobile device is a multi-purpose device. You can learn, you can socialize, you can talk to your friends, etc. So it's a multi-purpose device. And we need to be creative and use the mobile technology in education so that we can get students to learn using the devices. So there's a shift from E to M. And E refers to desktop notebook computers to mobile computers. So you can access library materials on your mobile device. You can have access health records. So we talk about a doctor in your pocket. So if you need some medical information, you can take out your mobile phone and you can search for information. So we are talking about learning in your pocket, where students will take out their mobile device and they will learn when they're ready, anytime, anywhere. So governments around the world, to give students access to education, they are implementing large-scale projects for the population. And just to highlight a few, Thailand is distributing 1.7 million tablets to students in schools, and eventually each student will have one tablet. So one computer per child, one tablet per child. Brazil just announced they will give 600,000 tablets to teachers so that they can prepare to teach students, and then they will give the tablets to students, which is a good way to do it. You give it to the teachers first, and then you give it to the students, whereas other countries are give it to the student and then give it to the teachers. I think it's backward. They should give it to the teachers, make sure that they're comfortable, they can use the technology, and then give it to the student. The country of Qatar has the vision for 2030 so that the citizens of Qatar can use ICT in their everyday business, in government, in education, etc. And actually, I'm leading a major research project in Qatar where we are using mobile devices to train oil and gas employees to improve their communication skills. So it's funded by the Qatar Foundation, and Athabasca University is the lead researcher, with Qatar University, Qatar Petroleum, and Qatar Mobility Innovation Center. So Qatar is looking at using of mobile devices in different sectors for their citizens. And South Korea announced that by 2015, all of the Korean school curriculum will be digital, no more textbook, so students will take a tablet to school rather than paper, so it will be paperless. We tend to give access to education to the normal students, everyday students. But we also should look at females. In some cultures, females do not have access to education, but they have mobile devices, they have mobile phones, they have tablets. Why not deliver the education to the females? We have a lot of special needs students who have mobility problems. We can deliver the learning materials on their mobile devices, and they can learn from anywhere. We have students who live in remote locations, indigenous students, so we can deliver instruction on their mobile phones. We have nomads, people who move from one place to the next. If they have mobile technology, then they can access learning. And we have to think about the older generation, the older adults who need to do professional development. They don't want to go back to school to learn, but if you deliver the learning materials on their mobile devices, their tablets, then they can learn from anywhere. And some countries have the homeless people. Why not give the homeless people a tablet computer, which is not very expensive today, so that they can learn and improve themselves? So we need to think, in addition to our regular students, we need to think of these different types of students so that we can get them to learn to improve themselves and we can have education for all. So as I mentioned, we are ignoring the engineering students because we do not design engineering courses, the hands-on courses for them to have access. And I think we need to do more research, we need to do more projects, and I agree with Professor Blackman that we need to do things virtually for the engineering students so that they can access the learning. And there was a question about smell and sight, etc. when you do labs. You can have home laboratory kits where you send a kit to the students and they will actually use the equipment, the chemicals, and they will do the experiment, real experiment. And when they're finished, they send it back to the university. So that's one way to get around the hands-on, the tactile, and the smell. You give them actually, send a home laboratory kit to them that they can use. Online lab demonstration, we will actually do demonstrations, and after they do the demonstrations, they can go into a real lab to do the experiment. We can use things such as Second Life to give them a virtual environment to see what concepts look like and how things flow. So for example, in the medical field, you can have an avatar goes into the human body, and the students will feel as if they're actually touching the heart, the lungs, etc. So they get a virtual walkthrough of the human body. E-experiments, where they can do simulation online, and remote operation of instruments. So our astronomy course students actually can control the telescope from anywhere in the world. They just have to access the software and the microscope. So if you think about space, we send equipment, we send mission to Mars and to space, and people on Earth can actually control those equipment from Earth. So they can do experiment for Earth. Why don't we see what the people at NASA and the Space Agency are doing and try to duplicate that in education? So we can educate engineers at a distance. I think we need to do more research in that area. The Verizon Foundation did a study on what the ultimate school in the 21st century will look like. And the 4 top ones that came out from that study is use of digital media. Things will be digitized. And it seems as if we're moving away from paper to digital information. And there's a prediction that there will be no more paper in the near future. Everything will be digitized. So students will have to use computers, tablets, mobile devices. Games as a learning strategy because of the new generation of students. Use of mobile devices and online courses. So based on the Verizon study, those are the top 4 for an ultimate school in the 21st century. And I think my 15 minutes is up, yes? Okay. Thank you very much.
Before opening the floor for questions for a few minutes, since you touched on engineering courses, engineering programs, and since my specialization is in computer engineering, I know that simulation of various parallel processing architectures, for example, reconfigurable computing, requires powerful computer systems, or HPCs, high-performance computers, to run these simulations in real or near real time. So how can we manage that for a distance education, for example, advanced computer architecture course, if you want to carry out simulation online, for example?
Yeah, no question that students will need to have the technology to do the simulation. But if you really look at computers today, I think they're powerful enough that they can do some type of a simulation, but not a complex one. So yes, we need to make sure that students have the equipment to do the simulation, which is one of the challenges today for students to do the online simulation, yes.
Okay. Any questions, please? Dr. Fayrouz. Microphone.
Dr. Ali, I did a study when we started the open learning in Lebanon on my students. It is something different than performance. I asked them, even those in remote areas, I have a survey, which type of learning they prefer. Even those in remote areas, they said they prefer the face-to-face, or at least what we are having now, the blended learning, having part of it face-to-face and the other part using technology. People, they like to interact. So I don't know if we are now saying that we want to have a smart village, everybody will learn wherever. Still, I think we cannot avoid this sentiment of learners.
I think if you give students the option of face-to-face and online, they will choose face-to-face. But if they have no option, you know, it's just online, I think they will adapt to online education. I think that's one of the problems we're having today. We give students the option of face-to-face and online. And with regards to in terms of the different types of students, I think it depends on the learning style of the student. If some students prefer online, some people prefer face-to-face, they're a people person. And I did some learning style research study in the Gulf region in North America, and I noticed some differences. North Americans tend to learn by themselves. They like to learn individually, whereas the Gulf students like to communicate, they like to interact with each other, yes. So it depends on the culture, depends on the learning style, yes. But as I mentioned, eventually all information will be electronic, and they will have to use the electronic devices to access information.
Yes, please.
Professor Ali, could you tell us something about the accreditation in Canada of your degrees and the bodies that do the accreditation, if you have it? And is it by subject or is it the university as a whole? Give us some idea. And maybe Dr. Blackman can jump in as well on this question. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Our university is accredited by the United States, Middle States Accreditation Body. So the entire university is accredited by the US Middle States Accreditation Body. We are also accredited in Greece by the Ministry of Education of Greece. And since Greece is part of the European Union, we are also accredited in the European Union because we are accredited by one country in the European Union.
What criteria do they use? They come and visit you and...
yes.
Because you're a different type of animals, so I mean,
no,
it's a very interesting process.
We have site visits that come and visit our campus, talk to professors, talk to students, look at the libraries, look at our courses. Yes, so we have state visit. And my president is here. Maybe he can add something to that, yes.
I could add to that. We have the largest nursing program, for example, in Canada, which does require human contact, but it is online. That nursing program is accredited by the Nursing Associations of Canada. It's accredited nationally and provincially. Where we do have problems is in some disciplines. For example, professions are accredited provincially, so you might have the Engineers of Ontario. They have determined that, with no evidence, that you can only be accredited engineer if all of your courses are residential, every last one of them. So, and we ask them, like, why do you believe that? We just believe it. So we say, are you interested in evidence? Well, we're talking to them, and so evidence will come to play. We have just opened up Canada's first online architecture degree, which you can imagine is even more complex than engineering. But we were approached by the Royal Architects Institute of Canada. They said most drawings these days are done online. Most drawings are shipped online. Most interactions with our clients are online. They said, we think it's rather backward of us to only have residential programs. We, in fact, would be better as a professional profession to be online. So it varies from profession to profession, but all of our professional degrees are accredited by the bodies as appropriate. For example, like nursing, and so are others. It's going to be a long journey to erode some of the very, what I call conservative attitudes that are not necessarily rooted in evidence. But we're winning slowly and surely.
Final question, please.
My name is Ahmed Majdoube. I'm the Dean of Language Studies at the Arab Open University. My question is really about research, about the preparedness / preparation of the students. The Open University in the UK and Athabasca, they function within, quote unquote, a Western context. And something was mentioned about assumptions behind learning. Something was mentioned also about the cultural background of students. You have done a good job in terms of focusing on the tool, and that is excellent, because I want a learning tool that works, that's easy, and so on. How much work has been done on the student? Because we find ourselves at the Arab Open University doing so much in terms of preparing our students to benefit from this tool. And it seems to me that without enough preparation, it will be like us putting the cart before the horse. And the cultural context has to be taken into account. We are partners with OU. We are about to partner with Athabasca. How much research has been invested in terms of cultural differences in students' preparedness to learn? That, I think, is a crucial issue. Thank you.
I'll just make one comment on that. It's, I think the key to the student preparedness is the tutors. I think we need good tutor support. So, for example, for our courses, the tutors are supposed to contact the student within the first 2 weeks to make contact and to find out if the students have any problem and if they have any issues, etc. And then we have service standards for the tutor to follow. So, for example, they have to respond to student email within 48 hours or telephone call. They have to provide feedback to assignments within 5 working days. So I think it has a lot to do with the tutor and what support you provide to students.
Okay, we'll have more time later for questions for everybody, but first of all, Professor Ali, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. We move to our third speaker, final speaker, Dr. Muhammad Malli from the Arab Open University in Lebanon. Dr. Malli is an assistant professor of computer communication engineering at the Arab Open University since 2011. He worked for the Lebanese telecom industry 3 years before that. He also worked as a lecturer and researcher at the University of Nice, Sofia, Antipolis, after receiving his master's and PhD from the same university. During his 6 years he spent in France, his research activities were achieved in INRIA, where he participated in multiple projects and published multiple papers in journals and conferences. His main research area include internet topology inference, internet measurement and traffic analysis, overlay networks, and network security. His talk today will be on efficient integration of ICT tools in learning.
Thank you.
Professor Malli.
Good morning. So, as Doctor said, I will present you how to integrate efficiently the ICT tools in learning. I have good experience in using ICT tool in research. In the last 2 years, I have practiced these tools with students, and I hope to provide you some interesting outputs from this research. So my talk is composed of 3 main parts. In the first part, I will present the inefficient learning practices that we are seeing in many universities today. In the second part, I will explain how to overcome these inefficient practices using special software tools. And in the last part, I emphasize on the simulator softwares, which are very efficient to improve the learning system. So in the first part, the starting point of this research was the realization that the slides has become the common learning practice by providing the students a summary of text materials. So we are making a lot of effort in broadcasting these slides containing the text materials on whiteboard, smartboard, through video recording. At the end of the day, all what we are doing is facilitating the access of the slides to the students. But we are not making as much as effort concerning the improvement of the content itself. So we think that the content of the course should not be only the text materials, and we should rely on a special software in this scope. So first of all, to evaluate the deficiency of using the slides as only a summary of text materials, we have conducted a survey of 205 students from different study majors and university levels. So the major observation in this survey is that 87 to 88% of students do not find that the slides containing text materials help them to be more concentrated on the lecture or to be more motivated to participate in class discussion. So this could be explained by the fact that most of the students, 78%, find that the slides creates in class some lethargic atmosphere that make them sleepy. So here, the slides that contain mainly text, summary of the text materials, of course. So here we should revisit the best teaching practices to overcome this inefficient usage of the slides. We have found mainly by Anand in 2007 that after 20 minutes of continuous lectures, assimilation starts to fall off rapidly. So first of all, we should include in the slides, after an equivalent period of time, special activities as rhetorical questions that should be included in the slides, survey with exemplifiers, brainstorming to motivate the student to provide alternative possibilities on the presented theory, group work, challenge the student to solve some group work exercises, and ending the slides with small examinations of true or false or multiple choices, just to stimulate the concentration of the students during the lecture. So on the other hand, we have found also that the majority of the students, more than 89%, rely only on the slides during their standalone study. And only 10.73% of students use the textbooks with the slides. So we have found that more than 95% of these students that use the textbooks have GPA greater than 2.7. So that the students with relatively lower GPA rely more on the slides just to minimize the study materials. And this inefficient learning practice will not help them to improve their GPA, of course. So they need to rely on the textbooks and other technology to better understand the study material. So after discussing with many coordinators from different majors and in different universities, they have all agreed that the usage of slides require more time and mind effort for the students to acquire the structure of the materials from one side and to have deep understanding of content from the other side. So first of all, here we should use efficiently the technology to overcome this problem of using a summary of text material. This should be done by providing the student a dynamic behavior of the theory presented in the text material. So the students read a lot of text in the slides and even in the textbooks, but especially in the engineering and sciences majors. So we need, in these majors, there are a lot of concepts which are related to the practice. So providing this concept and this theory just as summary of text in the slides or just as simple description, it will be very difficult to students to have deep learning. So we should rely on software tools that provide dynamic behavior of the theory, so that students can better understand these concepts. So we should use multimedia tools for animations and video tracks. For example, to explain a course related to microprocessor or computer architecture, we do not need to display a lot of text to the students, and it will be hard for the student to understand these details, all these details, without showing him some presentation of the real behavior of this system. So the usage of multimedia tools is very interesting. And this is known, the more advanced and the modern software tools that could be used nowadays, as professors explained, is simulation tools. So the simulator software that I will focus my presentation on it is very interesting to provide the student dynamic behavior of the model. Basically, students face a great challenge in understanding theory, and it's expensive or not practical sometimes to bring the experimental platform or the test bed to the student, to the class or to home, okay, or to his office. So what is the solution? How we can provide the students such practical exercises? The solution is the usage of software simulation. Okay? It's simply a software that could be installed in his PC or in his tablets, as Professor Ali said. So using this simulator, the student can have such virtual environment where he or she can practice the different theories learned in the textbooks, okay, without the need to be implemented in the reality. Okay, so the simulator software implements every detail related to the real practical system. And it will execute, the software will execute the different concepts or protocols without the need to be implemented in the reality. So what it has been proven in this domain is that persons who practicing simulations are able to learn a set of concepts in less time. So that's what we need with our students. So it's a good news. And persons who think in a scientific manner conduct more enhanced simulation. Okay? So given these findings, the Chinese proverb could be applied in our context when relying on instructional simulations. So tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, and involve me and I will learn. So we suggest in such open learning system to involve the student in the learning system through using such simulator software. So we should find the appropriate simulator software for every major of study, of course, and this software should have an easy graphical user interface for students. So it's not a software, a simulator for researchers, for senior engineers. It's a simulator for students, so it should have a very easy graphical user interface where students can easily apply the different concepts learned in class. So I take the case study of, in the domain of computer communication engineering. In this domain, if we use, for example, OpNet simulator, in such simulator, you know, in these fields, students should understand how the network nodes are connected and how they are communicated among each other, and the functionality of a large number of protocols. Okay? So it's very hard to the students to memorize all these details using the text materials. So if we provide the students such tool where he can construct its proper communication network and at any scale, so it can be at a local scale or regional scale or national scale or even worldwide scale, as you see in the following figure. So he can construct a network at a worldwide scale, okay, using the simulator, and he can edit the details of every link in this network. So we can choose, for example, a link which connects US to Europe, as you see in the figure, across the Atlantic Ocean. It can be satellite link, for example, and he can edit another link as fiber optic link, and so on, okay? He can also edit the details of every node, okay, in the network, and can configure these nodes from the application layer to the physical layer. So he can launch the different applications in the network as if you have a real network that are communicating across the world. So this can be easily configured and launched using such simulator software. So this helps the student not only to better understand the theory presented in the text materials, okay, but also it provides the students knowledge which is not provided in any slides or text materials, as for example, learning modeling techniques, designing techniques, make some the decisions which are related to the experiments that he or she is working on, okay, have critical thinking, group working through different scenarios of studies, okay, and he can also select the results required to make the analysis, and the software will provide the students the different curves. So in this case, the student have more experience in probability and sampling theory, because using a limited set of scenarios, the student must take conclusions. So what is the conclusion from your simulation and these scenarios? So trying to generalize the observations, or predicting the outcome, or extrapolating some observation. So this provides the students better understanding of probability and sampling theory. So also the students can edit the protocols implemented in every network node. Okay, so the software provides him the different processes running in this node, and this is virtual. There is no node that's running in reality these processes. And it provides him, as you can see, the different, at the right side, the different protocols running in this node and the interactions between these protocols. Also, he can edit, okay, the different processes or states of the same protocol. For example, he wants to see what are the states of the HTTP application, or FTP application, or TCP. So what are the states during the running time? So he can see, for example, TCP has sent a packet, waiting for acknowledgement. The different states are on the right hand, and how we can have the transition from one state to another. Okay? So it's very easy for the student to visualize these protocols and states instead of reading them as text materials. So he will memorize better and understand better these details. So finally, the student can also edit the source code of every process. On the right hand, we have the source code of a process running in the simulation, so that the student can change, for example, the value of a parameter or a statement in the source code, so that he can see the impact of this change in the protocol on the functionality of the network and on the performance, for example, of the application, so that he can better understand the functionality of the application itself, okay, if he made such experiments. And this is not possible, I repeat, using the classic study materials as slides or textbook. So finally, I summarize, we have conducted a survey that shows the deficiency of using the slides when it summarizes the text materials for students. It transforms the class to lethargic and non-interactive environment, and it attains surface learning to students. So to maintain the concentration of the students, tutors should integrate in the slides special activities, as we have said, and the major things that we have emphasized in this paper is that we should use software simulation tools in every field of study to provide the student a dynamic behavior of the theory presented in the text materials, okay, and to provide him deep learning of the content and not only surface learning as it is done using the slides containing set of text. Okay, for every field of study, we should find the appropriate simulation tool. I have emphasized on my domain of research, which is computer networking. It exists, so OPNet, for example, and many other ones. In some field of study, if there is no simulation software that is implemented yet, so we should work on it from today, because it brings many benefits for students, as I have explained, not only deep understanding of content, but also special skills as modeling, designing, experimenting, critical thinking, etc. Okay? Many thanks for your good listening.
Thank you, Dr. Melli. Before opening the floor for questions, there's no doubt that the carefully designed simulation tools with user-friendly graphical interfaces are very useful in all courses. I know I've designed some of these tools in the courses I've taught in the computer hardware sequence over the past 2 decades for microprocessor systems, computer architecture, digital logic design, and so on. They provide a much better way of understanding the material. They provide self-paced learning, all of which are conducive to learning. It also helps moving from memorization learning modes to a teaching mode that ensures understanding the course material. I have to mention this. Some of the challenges that involve this is also the exams that we offer. I've always offered open book exams. By offering open book exams rather than closed book exams, this basically means that the questions have to be carefully written, which would stress design questions and questions that may have several valid answers rather than a single one. I thought this would be relevant to say. Any questions from the audience? Please go ahead.
My name is Sami Isa. I'm professor of experimental mechanics, and I'm a member of the Kuwait Virtual University project team. You emphasized deeply the usage of simulation. What's about if we can go one step further and present the theory or ideas or a statement or observation in the form of games? In this way, we are linking an attraction element to the theory that might keep the idea for longer in the mind of the learners and not the students. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. As I have said, we should use multimedia tools as animator, video tracks, games, as you wish, okay? This provides the student dynamic behavior of content. I agree, very good. But we should also use simulator software, because simulator software provide us a way to run the experimentation from A to Z as if we are running the experimentation in the reality. So it doesn't only show us a figure as I have presented, showing how the protocols are connected or network nodes are communicating. Not only a figure. So it provides us a complete experimentation with curves at the end, with all the results that we can obtain in the reality. So we still need the simulator software to go further in the experimentation. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes.
There is one interesting point that Dr. Hassan have said in the previous presentation. The fact is that simulation software, okay, requires higher processing, okay, than other software. Like PowerPoint or multimedia software or any other things, because the library has to run the different mechanisms launched. So this requires high processing. So the problem is that this high processing could not be achieved on a tablet, okay? Mobile learning. Although we all agree on the importance of the usage of tablet in learning. So the solution, I think, is to run the simulator on dedicated softwares, okay? On a huge machine, dedicated softwares, and to access to this simulator remotely. So we can launch the simulator remotely and get the results without the need to be run on a tablet or smartphone or even laptop, okay? Thank you.
Exactly. There are very high performance computing, massively parallel processing systems that can be shared nowadays online. So you can send the data, use the system for a certain period of time and get the response online. This is being implemented all over. Okay, we have another 4 or 5 minutes for questions to any of the speakers. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is to Dr. Tim Blackman, and I was interested in the learning design process and how it involves the feedback from students in solving some of the problems which they might face. And since the Arab Open University is a partner with the Open University, I'm wondering whether the feedback of students in the courses offered by the Arab Open University are also included in the review and design process, so that it takes care of the problems faced by the students in the Arab Open University.
I think the answer to that is probably no, but I'll take that back and talk to you later.
Could we pass the microphone to the gentleman?
Dr. Mufid Abu Musa from Jordan. I think if we want to take like a simulator or dynamic software in our textbooks, I think we should revisit and redesign our textbooks in a way that fit with this new or like a pedagogical way of teaching. The other thing is, from my experience, using like GeoGebra, dynamic software similar to this simulator in math education, most of the students said this is not in the exam. It's good for learning or for understanding, deep understanding, but it's not in the exam. You are teaching something not in the textbook. So this is a problem. So we should revisit and redesign our textbooks in a way that fit with this simulator. This is an idea.
Yes, please. There's a question behind. Yeah.
I'm Dr. Osama Hamid from the Arab Open University in Kuwait. The issue of tactical experiences have been mentioned several times. Dr. Tim emphasized that this is something that we sometimes could not compensate for. And Professor Ali suggested a sort of mobile laboratories where you can teach students everywhere. I would suggest on the assumption, on the basic assumption that e-learning is in fact not a replacement, but rather a complementary to the traditional learning. I suggest that collaborations with traditional universities could be held, and on this basis, the e-learning university provides the open learning expertise, whereas the traditional universities compensate for such possibilities like the tactical experiences.
Any more? Could you pass the microphone, please?
Thank you, Your Excellency. I wouldn't have liked to take the floor again, except for a very important issue that has been raised that will need clarification, I believe, namely the comparison between face-to-face learning and open learning. As a mathematical statistician, since we were speaking of meta-analysis, When we do compare the students as far as the learning outcomes are concerned, we should not forget that we have so many, in the language of mathematical statistics, independent variables. The dependent variable is the achievement of the students. The independent variables are the course content, the teacher, the quality of teachers, the quality of the material, the learning environment. All these should be taken into consideration. Even the student age, the motivation of the student. So when we take into consideration all these variables, all that we need to compare is the delivery method. There is a delivery method, educational tool, which is the face-to-face approach, compared to the open learning approach. I believe that open learning has never been intended to replace face-to-face learning. But there are human beings who are unable to go for the face-to-face learning. And the size of this population is growing because face-to-face learning cannot cope with the very high demand worldwide on education. So open learning is a necessity. And the proof is that some of the universities that have face-to-face programs, they are running now in parallel open learning programs to reach these students. So if we really would like to make a real comparison, then we would have to compare, make everything equal. Maybe take a class where the age groups are all mixed up random. The professors who are teaching here are comparable with the professors who are teaching here. Everything equal except the delivery method. One approach is the face-to-face and the other face is the open learning. Because in the open university, there is the blended approach where we have, we usually, when we talk to people who do not know anything about the Arab Open University, we tell them, wait a minute, instead of going to 3 classes during the week, you get your module at the beginning of the week, you on the e-learning platform, and then by the end of the week, every 20 or 25 students, they have a tutor where the face-to-face component is really there. And this was, as far as accreditation is concerned, this was our selling pitch with accreditation in the Arab world. Without this component, we would have had trouble with the ministers of higher education, including some here, myself when I was. Thank you very much.
Okay, before ending the session, I have to say that there's a major transition going on, not just regionally but globally. In the keynote speaker mentioned that South Korea is going completely digital by 2015. Everybody is going digital. When this will be achieved is unknown, depending on the situation of each country. But as Minister of Education and Higher Education, I can give you a snapshot of some of the achievements in Lebanon as far as ICT integration into education. Over the past 2 years, we've done quite a few things for the first time in Lebanon. We have we've worked on for over a year and a half on an ICT strategy in education. We have introduced a pilot study of 1,500 tablets introduced to grade 10 and 11 secondary classes with implementation of e-books in all topics in grade 10 and 11. We carried out a smaller pilot study last year. It's a learning process for us. The same problems that Lebanon is facing are being faced by almost all countries across the world. I know that from the Education World Forum that's held once a year every January, and we basically compare notes. Over 100 ministers go attend this very important forum in London, and I'm sure you have attended this before. This move to the digital world and obviously will affect the K-12 education sector as well as higher education is happening right now. We are in the middle of this wave that will take place over the next decade or so. I know Kuwait is doing a lot on this, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and I think whether we like it or not, this is the direction we're going in, so we might as well make the best use of it. I'd like to thank all the speakers for this very nice, very interesting session, and I am asked to tell you that lunch is on the first floor, and that we start our second session at 1:30 prompt. Thank you very much.
تسلم.